Ed here with the Digital Digest, and today I wanted to share a video about two of the best mirrorless interchangeable lens cameras on the market here in 2019, and I would wager also in 2020, and we'll see about 2021. But I've got the Sony A6600, which is an APS-C camera, $1,400 US, a little bit under that for the body alone that we're looking at here and that I've been covering. And I've got the A9 Mark II, which is Sony's latest and greatest full frame offering. Don't worry, I'm not going to keep them like this too long. I'm going to flip them right now. Don't want too much dust getting on the sensor, and don't worry, I have my air blower nearby. So $4,500 for the A9 Mark II, and as I mentioned, $1,400 for the A6600. And I call these two the best mirrorless interchangeable lens cameras because, frankly, in my opinion, they are. Now, with the A9, the original A9 and now this A9, we didn't get a new sensor in the Mark II. We have the same sensor. You know, a lot of you out there probably were hoping that in the second gen A9 we would see a resolution bump, and I understand. But Sony has doubled down on the success of the original A9 and essentially has improved everything on this camera other than the EVF and the sensor. I mean, everything on here from ergonomics to weather sealing, the button layout, addition of buttons and dials, they've done this all to accommodate professionals. We now have two UHS 2 SD card slots on the right side. We have dual band Wi-Fi on board, so we do have 5 gigahertz. We have USB 3.2 here on the left side of the body. We have memos that can be integrated into your images so that you want to tag an image specifically, you can. 5.5 steps gained with the improved in-body image stabilization, improved battery life, even though it's still using a Type-Z battery. And, you know, if all of this is what you're looking for, you have the best camera right here. It's not the least expensive camera at $4,500, but I would argue it's probably the best one that money can buy, especially if you're already vested in E-mount lenses or if you're ready to buy them. I mean, Sony now has lenses that you can really leverage this with. Not that you couldn't utilize the original A9, but everything's been improved here, again, other than the resolution that it pushes, in my opinion. That's what I think people are going to be most picky about. It does not have color profiles, so if you're looking for HLG, you want to do HDR stuff, you want to have S-Log, you're not going to have that with the A9 Mark II. But its autofocus, so far in my experience, outperforms the original A9 that I reviewed years ago. And even though it's rated on paper with the same speed, its accuracy and, again, its actual, I would say, hit rate of getting keepers is higher than the A9. And I don't think that many people would have thought that that was necessarily possible, in spite of all of the anticipation they have for whatever Sony's going to roll out next, and usually high expectations at that. So the A9 Mark II, I can't say enough good things about, even though so many people were disappointed that it didn't offer more. I think this is a camera that pros, and myself included, wholeheartedly welcome, because if you can take something that's amazing and make it better, no one's going to be upset. You don't have to change the wheel. You've already invented it with the A9. So the A6600, also a controversial offering from Sony, or not controversial, but kind of like the A9 Mark II. People were expecting more. I'm not comparing them exactly, by the way, because I think the A9 Mark II is by far and away a more important camera in Sony's lineup, because this continues to further their dominance in this space in terms of technology, and it's all just a matter of time with adoption. Now, the A6600 APS-C sensor, you know, and it's not a brand new resolution. It's not a brand new sensor. And this also disturbs a lot of people, much like the A9 Mark II, that they didn't get something with a higher megapixel rating, or at least a newer tech. By the way, this has a new processor, so new tech is living in the A9 Mark II. Now, it's also living in the A6600. It's just that so many people were waiting and hoping that they were going to get a feature set that wasn't as familiar as the A6400. And this camera is very similar to the A6400, but it has in-body image stabilization. It has a headphone jack and a microphone jack, which no other APS-C camera has. But it is missing a flash, something that Sony hasn't done in a very long time. They removed the flash from this APS-C body. But It does have a Type-Z battery, much like the larger A9 Mark II, which gives this APS-C camera twice the battery life of previous generations, which makes a big difference when comparing it to the A6400, even though the A6400 is around 900 US, and again, this is 1400. Battery life, in-body image stabilization, those are already things that for me are worthwhile at the price of entry for this camera. It doesn't mean I don't think that the A6600 is priced right. I think this would have been better off at 1200, even 1300. I think would have been more palatable. The flip around display, same thing we have on the A6400, and the same thing that you're seeing on a lot of Sony cameras now. It's becoming more popular because this is targeting vloggers. This camera is not, obviously, but this camera, in terms of its form factor and overall performance, I mean, it borrows much of its autofocus capability from what we have in the larger A9 Mark II. So we have real-time tracking here for video. We have eye detection for humans and animals in both of these cameras. And it really makes them two of the best performers in their respective class ever made. Now, the A6600 certainly has more competition than the A9 Mark II, in my opinion. However, it's not that much more, and that's why I feel the A6600 is best in class right now. There are some of you out there that will make the argument for Fuji. I am not one of them. So to me, the A6600 is the best of breed. It just could have been a little bit less expensive, but between the trade war and other things at play, the price sits where it does. You know, we got more aspect ratios than we had previously in the APS-C category, and overall, the A6600, there are things that I wish we could add to it. I wish they would redesign the EVF, but that's really the only thing outside of the sensor that I feel could have been addressed. Everything else, these two cameras are very similar because everything else about the A6600 is an enhancement from every other A-series, A6000 series camera that's out there. I mean, they have refined, polished, improved literally everything in this body when comparing it to the A6500, the 6400, the 6300. It's just improved in every facet. So the A9 Mark II is much of the same, you know, and that's why I'm doing a video about these together, because so many people are complaining that the sensors haven't been improved, which is not completely true, but we don't have a new sensor. A new sensor was not launched with either of these cameras, but every other element, ergonomics, weather sealing, not EVF, they also share that in common, no improvement in the EVF. Everything pretty much has been improved. Buttons, addition, as I've mentioned, of dials, and it's just, they share a lot in common in that they're all about autofocus performance, they're all about hit rate, they're all about the real-time tracking, even though the A9 doesn't have color profiles and the 6600 does. And of course, they top out at 4K 30. We don't have any 4K 60 models. I assume that will live in the next version of the A7S, which I still think is going to happen in spite of a lot of speculation. But again, these cameras share so much more in common than you would think at first glance. And I think it's also a narrative about where Sony's at right now in DI. I mean, they've taken a very large market share that they did not previously have, and they're sitting on it a little bit. And both of these are not risky endeavors, in my opinion. When you just take a product that's already great, and I view the 6500 as the already great product, and you just make it better. Because this doesn't blow those cameras away, but it's better than both of them. Same applies to the A9 Mark II. When you take the best sports camera, in my opinion, on the market, and you just make it better, who's going to be upset? I mean, if you don't like it, you don't buy it. That's the way things work, at least in the US, hopefully still. So both of these, again, really speak to what Sony's up to these days in terms of they're not trying to reinvent anything, and I think they're trying to weather the storm because business hasn't been great for anyone out there. And if you can make two cameras that are improvements and make some money because on the merit of them actually being better than the previous generations, you're going to do it, right? I mean, you're not going to leave money on the table. And at the same time, they didn't, revolutionize, because right now I don't think is the best time to do it. In spite of how many people think the economy is great, it's not. I mean, unemployment, I don't care what the number says. I'm not going to get into this right now. It's a lot higher than the number. And with what's going on in the world, I don't see things getting better for quite a while. And I'm not being pessimistic. I've never been a bear. I've always been a bull. So I have every reason to hope for the best. But in current circumstances, it's funny that Sony's latest offerings really reflect a bear approach to the camera market. They are not taking risks that clearly aren't well calculated. And both of these, again, are just improvements on already solid products that not everyone's going to buy, but I think enough people will buy both of them. This camera, I foresee taking a price drop much sooner than we'll see with the A9 Mark II, because the A9 Mark II is clearly tailored to a different market than the A6600. And I've stated out of the gate, the A6600 is overpriced in my opinion, but still that doesn't take away from its quality. And the A9 Mark II, I'm not so sure it's overpriced at $4,500. I mean, compared to the A9 original launch, yes, it's substantially more expensive, $1,000 more. But when you compare it to the rest of the industry, I think even at $4,500, they're still safe. And that's, again, what Sony's after here. Make a great product, price it the way you want, and because they're offering more than anybody else, I think they can get away with it. And that's the way things work. So two interesting products. Again, they share a lot in common. They speak to the direction Sony is going in right now. I don't think they speak to the future, but Sony's established now. They can make models that many of you will call not next gen. Maybe, that the A9 isn't really a Mark II. It's an A9, 0.5. But 1.5, I mean. But and the A6600, I think it is easily a next-gen camera in that lineup. But there are many that will say the 6400 makes it not really next-gen and just a 6400 within body. I don't think it's just a 6400 within body, but that is the argument. So two great cameras, different crowds. I do think, by the way, if you have both of them, that's not a bad thing to have these two in your bag. I mean, the new color science, the new autofocus system at its best in both APS-C and full frame, nothing to scoff at whatsoever. And new connectivity and weather sealing and ergonomics and improved battery life in both of them. So this is good stuff. I like what Sony's doing. Again, they're not revolutionizing, but better's better. And I give it merit. Of course, it's not worth it to everyone to upgrade or necessarily make the investment in either of these cameras when Sony already has a great lineup underneath both of these. Any questions or comments, please feel free to post them, hit that like button, and as usual, please feel free to subscribe. Later.